Hey everybody, this is Steve Winward, and in this video, I want to show you how you can use Shotcut, which is an open source video editor, to create technical demos to be able to publish those on YouTube. Now, I've already been doing this for a few months, and I've had a number of people ask me, what are you doing to edit your videos after the fact to create what you're putting out there on YouTube? So this is going to be a step-by-step of actually real footage that I've created for a previous video that I've already posted. I just want to show you kind of what are some of the tools and the tips that I'm using with Shotcut specifically for this purpose. All of my videos are kind of the same setup. I'll do a talking head in the beginning to introduce what I'm going to talk about. I'll switch over to my laptop and I'll do screen recording so you can kind of see that. I'll show you some different tips of how you can kind of zoom in or zoom out, do transitions between scenes. Sometimes you might want to obfuscate some data as well. I'll show you how I do all of that with Shotcut. I also don't want to advertise myself as an expert in Shotcut, but this is what I've learned so far, and this is how I know to do it. If there are better ways to do what I'm going to show in this video, please feel free to put them in the comments below, and I'm happy to share that with other people too. So let's go ahead and switch over to Shotcut, and I'll show you how I can actually use Shotcut to create videos like this. Okay, so here's the setup. We're looking at Windows Explorer, and I've got a couple different videos here. I've got the intro, which is a talking head of me introducing what I'm going to be talking about. I've got the demo, which is the ID Reader intro video file. And then I've also got the outro as well. So the idea here is I'm going to do a talking head shot to introduce it. I'm going to switch over to a screen recording. I'm then going to go to the outro to do a talking head to kind of wrap up what we just talked about. I've also got another video here for what I'm calling B-roll, which basically I'm going to have some footage that I want to show while I'm doing the talking head to highlight what it is that I'm talking about. So that's the setup and the file structure. Now I'm looking at Shotcut here, and I'm going to create a new project name. I'm already in the videos folder. What I did is I copied the name of the folder that I was just looking at, so I'm just going to paste that here. This will create a melt file inside of that folder, which then will use the folder structure that's already there for the files that I already have. Now, the video mode here, everything I shot was in 1080p at 60 frames per second, so I set that to that. If you did something different, you can change it there. Really important though, if you're doing a combination of talking head footage as well as screen recordings, make sure that your Windows screen recordings, when you're recording that, are also at 1080p as well. Otherwise, your resolution may be a little off. So that all looks good. Let's go ahead and start this. So that just created the melt file for Shotcut. Okay, so let's go ahead and pull in the first video. In this case, it's going to be the intro video. So let's go to Open File. We'll select Intro. Hey everybody. And now what we're looking at is actually a preview of the intro file. So if I hit the spacebar, just pause that. If I hit the spacebar again, I'll go ahead and play that. This is Steve Winward. And today I want to show you and so that's how you can kind of preview the video you've pulled in. But what you want to do to make this real is you need to bring that down into a track. So we're going to drag the video, which is the preview right here, down over to here. And that creates our first track for this video. Now, there's a couple of things to notice here. Now, once I'm down here, I can put the cursor anywhere along the time series of the video, and I can do the same thing. I can use the spacebar to play or to pause it. So let's go ahead and hit the spacebar. Hey everybody, this is Steve Winward. And so now we just did a preview of what the video would look like on the track. Now, the other thing that we want to do here is you can notice that when I recorded this, I didn't start talking right away. So the first thing I would want to do here is I would want to actually trim this up a little bit. So I want to start the video right around here. So in order to split the file, the shortcut is just the keyword S. So notice when I did that, there's now just two different parts of that same video. I can then go to the part I don't want, and I can remove that with Control X, which is a cut operation. And then what you see is then the video gets trimmed and also pushed to the left where it should actually start. Now, the next thing I want to do is at the end of this first video, I also want to trim it up. So if we go all the way here to the right, you can see that once again, I recorded a little bit longer than what I actually did for the talking. So I'm going to do a preview real quick here with the spacebar, and then I'm going to pause it right after resolution. So I'll pause it right there. That's where I want to cut this. So once again, I'm going to split that with S, and then I'm going to click on the part that I don't want. I'm going to do a Control X to then trim it up. So now I've got my first section of the video all good to go. So the next thing I want to do is I want to bring in two more files. So I've got the demo portion, which is a screen recording of what I was showing in my demo. And then I also have the outro. So let me show you how you can pull those in. So we're going to go back to Open File. So we're going to open the ID reader intro, which is the screen sharing demo. And once again, we get the preview kind of right here. I'm going to drag that to the end of the first video here. So let's bring that down here. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is the same thing I did in the previous one. I'm going to do a little bit of trimming first. So I'm going to go right to about here. I'll split that with S. I'm going to cut that middle section. Right about here is where I want to split this particular footage. So once again, S to split that. I'm going to cut the rest of this. And then now what I want to do is I want to bring in my last video, which is the outro file. So we'll go back to open file, go to outro. Let's drag that down to the track. And right before I start talking, I'm going to split that. We'll trim it up. Let's take a look at the end as well. In this case, let's just trim it right here. And I'm going to cut the rest of that. Now, what I've done so far is just stitching 3 different videos together. But you can also add some transitions as well. So let's go to that transition between the intro and the demo. It's right here. And so one thing that you can do is you can take this video, which is where we're going from intro to the demo. I can click on the video and then I can drag it just overlapping the intro. So watch what happens here. So I'm dragging and then I can just overlap this a little bit. And then when I do that, what we can now see is there's this new little section with an X, and that's representing that we have a transition between these 2 videos. So if we were to play this right here, let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like, the solution. So what we're looking at, so if you notice, there was that slow fade between the intro and the demo file, and you can actually toggle how long or how short of a transition you want there, but that's kind of a simple way of having a transition between scenes. So let's go ahead and add that for the other transition where we're going from demo to the outro video. So once again, I'm going to take the outro video and I'm just going to drag that over top of the demo video. And then we just added a transition there, and then we can preview what that looks like. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like, how it would look like. Once again, we just added a nice little transition from the demo portion to the back to the talking head shot. Another common thing that comes up quite a bit, at least in the videos that I've been doing, is I like to have sections where if I'm doing a demo, I like to be able to zoom in and zoom out of those to kind of highlight really what's going on. So let's go back to the demo portion of this video. And let's find a section where we want to kind of zoom in. So right about here, I would like to zoom in on this identity document reader section. And let me show you how you can go about doing that. There's actually a couple of different ways, but I'll show you the way that I like to do this. And what I'll do is I'm actually going to figure out exactly where that part of the video shows up. So I'm just previewing this right around here. Let's do it right about here is where we want to actually start the zoom. I'm going to split this with S. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the end of this video. And let's see if that goes out of the video feed at all. I think in this case, it's not. Okay, so what we're going to do is now that this section's split, I'm clicking in this part of the video, which has the part that we want to zoom into. I'm now going to go to filters here, and I'm going to add a new filter. And there's a bunch of different filters in Shotcut. Some are video, meaning you can alter the video of what it looks like. You can also do things to the audio as well. So maybe if you have a couple different tracks, you might want to mute the audio of one video, but you want to hear the audio of another video. In this case here, this is a video operation we're going to be doing, and it's actually one of the favorites. It's the size, position, and rotate. But if you want to see all of the video filters that you have available, you can go to video and you can then kind of scroll down to see the whole list. But here we go. We're going to use size, position, and rotate. So I'm going to double click that. And now it looks exactly the same. Now I want to make sure that I've got the preview at the actual section of the video that we're looking at here. And what you'll notice here is there's this new control right here. So I can actually, if I use my scroll wheel, I can start zooming in to this portion of the video. And then if you click on this new control, you can start moving around how you're centering the video after it's zoomed in. So let's do something like this. Okay, and I just want it to be nice and centered. That looks pretty good. And so now if we go back to the video, we're going to take a look at it where it's before it's zoomed in. Let's preview that. And then it got zoomed in, and there was no transition there, right? It just went immediately from totally zoomed out to zoomed in. but oftentimes it looks a little bit better if you have some kind of transition. And let me show you how you would do that. The way you do that are with keyframes. So let's go ahead and click on keyframes here. And we're going to click all the way to the left here. Now, once again, because we split this part of the video, it's all the way at the beginning is where the zoom starts and all the way at the end. But the nice thing here is that what Shotcut allows you to do is you can actually enable a transition from being zoomed out to zooming in. And what you do is you just drag this little handle right here, and then we can go. And so we're actually now controlling the amount of transition from being zoomed out to zoomed in. If I went to here, that would mean that's a 5-second transition from zooming out to zooming in. Let's try about 2.5 seconds. So we'll do that. Let's go back to the timeline and let's preview to see what that looks like as a sample here. And now what it's going to do is it's going to process with the pre-built model. So in that case, I think it looks a little bit better. We have a nicer transition going from being zoomed out to zooming in. And then we could also have a transition on the other end of that too. So if we went to keyframes over here, I could also configure a transition to go from being zoomed in to zoomed out. In this case, because the next scene is the outro, I don't need to do that. But if you had just a portion of a screen recording video that you want it to zoom in or zoom out, then you would want to be able to kind of control that on both ends. The next thing I want to show is that for the intro part of my video, I wanted to add what's called B-roll. So I've got another video that I wanted to be displayed as people still hear what I'm saying in the intro talking headshot. Now, the way that you accomplish this is you do need to have multiple tracks. So I'm going to right click down here and I'm going to say that I want to add a video track. And now what we can see is that there's now 2 different tracks here. Let's kind of scroll this up a little bit so we can see both at the same time. I'm now going to open the B-roll file, which is this insider sample license B-roll file right here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag that. In this case, I'm going to drag it to the second track. And then the other thing I can do here is I can trim it just like I did the other one. So let me get to the part where I'm actually starting to scroll through the site. So we'll start it right about there. I'm going to split that. I'm going to remove the other section. And then let's go to the end to see where it stops scrolling. We'll do it right about here. We'll split that. We'll trim this up. What happens here is that the tracks are stacked. So if I go to a preview right here, you see me as the talking head. Let's go ahead and play this just so you can kind of see what this would look like, which is the ID reader model. Now this is a pre-built model. And now notice what's happening there. You're still hearing the audio from track 1, but you're seeing the video from track 2. Now there is some audio in track 2, which are just me clicking. I don't want that to be included in the video either. And so there's a couple ways you could accomplish this. You could just mute it right here. The other thing you could do is you could click on this and you could add a filter to then mute the volume there. 2 ways to accomplish the same thing. So that all looks pretty good, but once again, I always think it looks a little bit better if you have some kind of transition going from talking head to whatever the B-roll is going to be. So let's see how we can do that. So I'm going to click right here on this particular thing. I'm highlighting the video for B-roll. I've also got the play bar where the feed is over top. And now what I want to do is I want to do a fade in. So we're back to filters. I'm going to do a fade in for this video. So we're going to double click that. And we can say whatever the transition is, but let's go ahead and just preview what this looks like by default, which is the ID reader model. Now, if you looked closely, what you'll see is that it's fading in from black. That doesn't look so great. What we really want is we want that to be opaque so that the talking headshot of me is still displayed as we're fading into the B-roll. Really easy to adjust that. Just click this little checkbox for adjust opacity instead of fade with black. And then when we preview this looks a lot better. So let's go ahead and take a look at that, which is the ID reader model. And we have a much nicer transition there. Let's do the same thing on the outro of the B-roll. So we'll toggle right to here. We're going to add one more filter on the same video. And now we're doing a fade out. Oops. We're not going to do a fade out of audio. Let's do that again. We're going to do a fade out of video. And we can change the distance on that. We could change the duration on that, but I like this. And once again, we're going to check that to make sure that it's opaque. And let's just preview what this looks like. Of that, process it with AI Builder. And now that looks really good. So now let's go back to the section where we were actually zooming in on the demo portion of the video. So we're right here and we're zoomed in. And what I want to show is a slight variation on this. Let's say that instead of zooming in, what I really want to do is I want to blur everything else except for what I'm trying to highlight. And I want that to be on top of the background there. How do we accomplish that? Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the previous filter that we had applied. So let's go ahead and remove that. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to bring in an image file. In this case, I've got an image of this portion of the video that I want to be on top, and I want to blur everything else out. So let's go ahead and open up a file. And let's go ahead and open up this image file that I've got right here. Because I pulled this in as an image, we see a preview of this, and it treats it as if it's a video, even though it's not. It's going to be a static thing. But what we can do is we can now drag this on top of the portion of the video we want to on track 2. And the first thing that we'll see here is if we went from the video to where the image is shown, it's going to be a harsh transition. So let's just preview that really quickly. And now what it's going to do is it's going to, so notice right there, it just automatically gets layered on top. There's no transition, but we'll fix that in a second. The other thing that's going on is that the background in this case is not blurred out, so it's harder to distinguish what we're trying to highlight in this scenario. So let's go ahead and first blur the background. So I'm going to go back to here on track 1. And what I want to do is I want to add a filter to blur everything on this video so that when we show the image on top, it's nice and highlighted. So let's go back to here to add a filter. And we're going to go to video. And then we're going to look for blur. There's a couple of different blur options. I'm going to choose blur exponential. So we'll click on that one. And what you can do is you'll notice that you can drag this amount. And as I go more and more extreme, it becomes more and more kind of blurred out. I think that that looks pretty good. And then what we're going to do here is I want there to be a transition for this image to actually show up. So I'm clicked on track 2 where the image is located. We're going to add another filter. And in this case, we're going to do a fade in and a fade out of the video feed. So we'll do a fade in, and then we'll make sure that it's coming from opaque. We're also going to do a fade out as well. Once again, check the box for opacity. And let's preview what that looks like now. And now what it's going to do is it's going to process with the pre-built model against this image with the sample driver. And I think that looks really good. Now, the next part to this is because I didn't split the main track, in this case, we do have to work with the keyframes to make sure they're kind of in sync with when that image is showing up and not. So let's go ahead and try to fix that really quickly. So we're going to go to keyframes here. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move the start of the keyframe right to where the play is right now. We'll do that. And then we would also have to adjust when the keyframe ends as well. So we'll go back to here. I'm going to put the preview right there. And now we're going to move when the end of the keyframe is to the play bar. So let's go back to this and we'll keep going. We want to get it right to where the play bar is. We'll do that. And now let's go ahead and preview what that looks like. And now what it's going to do is it's going to process with the pre-built model against this image with the sample driver's license. So I think that looks pretty good. There are probably other ways to accomplish that same thing, but that's the tactic that I've been using so far when I've been creating my videos. Another thing that's come up quite a bit for me is there's times where I want to blur out maybe a section of the video so that it's obfuscated for people to see. Let's suppose in this case, I've got this one video clip that I've already split where I want the driver's license to be masked or obfuscated. How would you go about doing that? Let me show you the way I've been doing that. If there's a better way, please put those in the comments below, but this is what I've been doing so far to achieve this. I'm going to add 3 different filters here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a search for shape. So I'm going to create a mask, a simple shape here. I'm going to then add the blur, which is the exponential blur. And then I'm going to lastly say I want to apply that mask. So there's 3 filters that I've just added there. And the easiest way to do this, if you go to the exponential blur, basically max this out, and now you can figure out that this is the section that's being blurred out. Now, the way you would change that is you go to the simple shape for the mask, and then there's these different things you can toggle here. What I can do is I can actually, with my cursor, I can click and kind of move it left or right. You can also just put numbers in here too if you want to be a little bit more precise with that. But in this case, I want it just roughly kind of centered to the driver's license. So let's kind of move it a little bit more to the left. And then I can also change the height of this too. So let's bring it down a little bit. And the other thing you can do too is if you get it close, you can actually then use your left and right arrows to kind of slowly move it there. And in this case, I want the height to be a little bit more. So let's go ahead and change that instead of 10% to maybe 12%. Let's see what that looks like. We'll go, how about 15%? Okay, that looks pretty good. And then the width, also we want that to be a little bit wider. So let's try and make that 12%. And now what we've got is the entire license actually blurred out there. And let's just go ahead and look at what this looks like if we look at it beforehand. To now, you can see that it's blurred out. There is no transition. You could add a transition if you want to, but from my perspective, if it truly is something you want to not be seen, you probably don't need a transition on that. All right, so now at this point, I'm really happy with the video. I'm ready to now export this so that I can share this either on YouTube or however else I want to share it. So what we can do now is we can go into the export tab here. There's a bunch of pre-built export options that you have. There is one for YouTube, and then you can actually go into the advanced and you can change all kinds of things. So you can change the different settings here to have better interpolation, for example. You can also go into the codec and change that as well. You can change the quality, how many frames are being used. You can change the audio as well. You could just stick with this. What I've done is I actually will change this slightly. So I'll change the quality. And then what I can do from there is I can then save this to actually then create a setting that I can go back to. So with whatever the settings are that you've applied, if you want to kind of toggle this up, you can then click the plus icon. That will then add a new custom export setting. So for example, I have a high res YouTube one that I've created where I have the quality set to 71%. The GOP on the frames is 30. And in that case, I've also set up some of the different interpolation settings as well. That's what I've been using for my YouTube videos so far. When you're ready to actually export that, what you can do is you can then click on export file, and then you just give it a name. By default, it's going to be an MP4, but you can change the setting on that as well if you want it to be something different. But there we go. I would then do that. I'll click save. This will then show me in the right the job status of where it's at. So it's at 0%. This one probably will take about 15 minutes or so to create, but we could then watch it go there. And in this case, I'm going to right click this. I'm going to stop that altogether. And then I can remove it from the log. The last thing I wanted to share with you all is a new way that I've been exporting my videos. So what I've noticed is that if I run Shotcut locally on my laptop, it works. It does take quite a while. And my fan is just maxed out on my laptop for about 30 to 45 minutes while I'm waiting for that video to run. I also can't do anything on my laptop while that's happening. So I wanted to try to figure out a way to kind of optimize that so that if, for example, I was doing this, I could still use my laptop for other things. The workaround I found is that what I've been doing now is I actually have a VM spun up in Azure that I only use for exporting video. And what I have done is I've got basically Windows 10 installed on a VM. And from a spec perspective, I forget the exact kind of Azure VM, but I've got 16 virtual cores, I've got 64 gigs of RAM, and I've got SSDs attached to this VM. So it's a really high performant VM in the cloud. And then what I do is when I'm ready to actually export, I copy all the files over to the VM, which only takes a few minutes. From there, I can then open the Shotcut file. So I'll go ahead and double click that. And what's cool about this is even though it's a totally different file location, because all of the videos are relative to the melt file for Shotcut, it just figures it out where the video should be. And then from there, I can go to, once again, I've got my own custom high-res version of a YouTube output. So I can double click that. I can then export the file and I can just output it right to here. I'll give it a .mp4 setting and we'll go ahead and do that. Now, what's cool about this is that because this is on a VM, I'm able to actually take advantage because it can do parallel processing of all 16 cores at the same time, something that I don't have access to on my own laptop. The other cool thing with this approach is that because it's in a VM, it doesn't affect the performance of my laptop, so I can do other things while this video is being processed. And lastly, all I do is I just wait for this to be done. Once the MP4 file is created, I then send that back to my laptop, shut the VM down. So I've only got the VM started and stopped for purely the export process. So while this is kind of a really high performant VM, I'm only paying for about maybe 30 minutes for whenever I need to export a video. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope it was helpful to see how you can use Shotcut to create technical demos to be able to put those onto social media channels like YouTube or LinkedIn. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the comments below. Also, once again, if there's better ways to do what I showed in these demos, by all means, please let me know and I'm happy to share with other people in the future. Until next time, thank you for watching this video.